Okay. So yes, you live in Leicester now and you still work a lot, I'm sure.
No, I do. I
No?
still work, just a bit now and then.
Okay.
I retired at the end of 2020, and it's interesting. The international work has continued despite the retirement. That
Mm-hmm.
people get in touch and say, "We're writing a chapter about somebody's career, and would you
Mm-hmm.
contribute?" And so I've carried on writing, but
Okay.
recently, slowly, I'm stopping really.
Mm-hmm.
Although, funnily enough, in the last fortnight, you contacted me, and then Fiona in Scotland
Yes,
contacted
I
me
remember.
about
Really?
the Scots are having a 50th exhibition after the publication of a great report in Scotland,
Mm-hmm.
and wanted me to do something. And
Mm-hmm.
then, I've taught in the University of Würzburg in Germany from
Mm-hmm.
time to time, and they've got back in touch and said, would I like to go? So, it's almost like life after death this week.
But you probably wanted to say as well that at home, in Leicester maybe, at NIAS, the former NIAS, there is not such a huge demand
No,
for you.
well,
Yeah,
I mean, they're very friendly, but
yeah.
they ran out of money, so they just do
Oh my God.
consultancy work. But I mean, NIA's changed dramatically between 20 when I retired and 2014. My immediate successor ended Adult Learners Week and turned it into a general
Mm-hmm.
lifelong learning week. Well, rather learning week for all.
Learning week, yeah.
Now there are hundreds of learning weeks, so
Mm-hmm.
we it lost the
Lost, yeah, its character.
combination of impact.
Mm.
It still happens in Wales
Mm-hmm.
and in Scotland and in Ireland and in Australia and in Slovenia
Mm-hmm.
and in South Africa. So I mean, but in England, no. I mean, they still have the Outstanding Adult Learners Awards,
Mm-hmm.
but it's become a tiny and private thing, whereas the core
Mm.
of Adult Learners Week is and was the organisers making it accessible to anybody who wants to
Right,
participate. Don't you
right.
think?
Yes, I agree completely. And we even titled the part of the celebration, as you could see if you looked at the program,
Yes,
People for People, because we believe it's,
exactly.
yeah, that's what was going on.
A-
So,
And
yeah,
with the change at NIAS, I mean, in a way, the organisation changed. It stopped having members, so it was no longer. It no longer had the networks
mm,
adequately, but especially it stopped being a voice of learners in the same way. And the
that's,
whole energy of Adult Learners Week was to bring to public attention, to celebrate and to highlight people's experience in order to influence other people to join in and to help policymakers understand the extraordinary diversity and benefit of adult learning, really.
right. So you actually touched upon the first question that
Yes,
I
first question. I don't mind repeating all
suggested.
that.
Yeah. Yeah, maybe if you just say a few words about why you have really always stressed the importance of celebrating, not only showcasing, but really celebrating, showing the joy of learning.
Well, to answer your question, I need to go back to before we started Adult Learners Week. In the 1970s, I worked in a small adult education centre in Brighton on the south coast of England. And the leader of the local council decided that they were going to stop funding adult education, saying that people didn't want to pay for tap dancing on the rates on the local taxes. We did all the usual things organisers do to complain, and then we thought we would celebrate our work if we were going to lose our grants, let's go out with a bang. Well, we decided to run an all-night, all-day teach-in for a week. As long as someone was learning, at some point, we'd get the thing sponsored by people. People could pay anything they wanted to go, and everybody taught a session about something they cared about free. It was an incredible success, and learners from all over became very excited. We had people move from Orkneys in the north of Scotland to join us for the week. It was on the radio. Very little happens at night, so the main news programme came 3 times every morning for the week. By the end of the week, the leader of the council said he'd been badly advised. And there were 2 products out of that week. One, that if you demonstrate the power and enthusiasm of adult learning and make it less private, then it's easier for policymakers to understand. But 2, the impact on the work of our centre was that for months and months afterwards, you couldn't get a place in a course to save your life. Everybody was excited by it. People who'd never done adult education before joined in. And so that is one little nugget of background experience of my own. The year we started Adult Learners Week was the end of 12 months when, again, the national government said, it said there's no such thing as adult education, only further education towards the world of work. Well, we got the women's institutes, all the women's organisations in Britain, 9,000 of them, to write letters to their MPs, members of Parliament. We organised petitions and we organised this big festival. And the letter writing by the women's organisations changed the government's policy in 3 weeks because almost all their members wrote, and so the government had to take on extra people to write letters back, and they changed their policy. And knowing that we were going to run Adult Learners Week in 1 week, they changed the end of their legislative discussions a week earlier because they were mildly terrified about the energy we'd been able to generate. We worked with the media organisations, the BBC, the independent television, the radio networks, to highlight the experience. They were really interested in telling the human interest stories of learners who changed their lives. Of course, once you get people across the spectrum of social life who've taken up learning for one reason or another, you suddenly realise it's much more of a movement than a miserable bit of private funding at the end of the day. And so from the beginning, we kind of thought, it's the joy that gets people to notice it. It's the celebration that says to people who very often have never been celebrated for anything very much before, that you are special, that this is important work. And also, it's that their enthusiasm that encourages other people to think, well, I might have a go at this. My mother, who'd been a domestic servant before the war and had never done anything in education, I took her to the first Learning Awards ceremony in Plymouth, in Devon, in Britain. And there was a woman almost her age who'd learned to read in her 50s and then organised literacy classes in her own village. And as we left the event, my mum said to me, "Here, she's just like me." And that sense of, and so I could do something too, was very much the heart of why we thought the idea was worth having a go at. In a way, we stole it from America. There'd been a congressional breakfast organised by their national body that illustrated 9 learners from different strands of the American Adult Learning Network. People paid to join in. We didn't think that was a very good idea. Networks, organisations, but in a way we borrowed the idea that it was quite a good idea to try to involve politicians in what we were doing, and we did, and we created a parliamentary advisory committee for adult education, with the help, obviously, of members of parliament. We had enthusiasm from all of the regional television companies to meet and to interview the winners of awards. And nationally, we were lucky. The one different strand of government had decided to promote training through commissioning some adverts from the BBC, which they linked in with Adult Learners Week to show adverts. The BBC doesn't do adverts, to do kind of advert-like encouragements, little stories to promote the value of adult learning that went on in front of every popular television programme and news during the first week. And we created a national helpline, which became a national line afterwards, so that people could phone up to ask to be put in touch if they were interested as a result of what they'd seen. And we had 55,000 telephone calls the first year, and of those, more than a half were in classes within 3 months. And again, more than half of them had been unemployed people. So we'd been efficient and effective at communicating.
Perfect. Very nice. Some things I knew, some I didn't. So thank you very much for showing how you started and what made it really worthwhile. And then it spread throughout the world. How did that happen, actually?
Well, there were initiatives a bit like it in Japan in relation to social education. In Jamaica, around literacy, and of course there'd been International Literacy Day events through UNESCO in many countries. But I mean, we were having such fun that we invited people from other countries to come and join with us. Both the colleagues from the European Association of Adult Education, from the International Council, and colleagues who'd heard about us and wrote and wanted to come. I went to Australia and on a fellowship, and the organizer of their Adult Education Association asked me to go with him to meet the government officials who were wondering what to do with some leftover money. And that was the genesis of the Australian Adult Learners Week, which continues actively to this day. In Switzerland, I mean, they went, as you know, I think went to a lot of detail on what they would do and decided they'd have Adult Learners Week every 2 years. But again, quite a lot of contact in advance. And of course, in relation to Slovenia, Zoltan came and spent the week with us. Extremely creative and bright bloke, and went back and did it rather better in Slovenia.
Zoran, not Zoltan.
Zoran, sorry.
Yeah.
No, it's terrible what memory does to names. I'm sorry. Zoran.
No problem.
He was a wonderful man. And then in Southeast Europe, well, that was you and your colleagues who coordinated the spread of Adult Learners Week in the Balkan countries, and then the European Union, as part of the follow-up from the Jacques Delors 1993 paper on European modernization, the white paper, had a real concern about motivation. How do you engage adults who didn't enjoy education the first time round, and they could see that the things happening in your country and mine, in Belgium and in Finland, in Norway, that there was, in Russia, there was something in all of this that was worth supporting, and so we brought together a group of people to work on common under Alan Smith in the European office. And in 1998, we persuaded the UNESCO World Conference, Confintea 5, to adopt Adult Learners Week. I spoke, my minister spoke encouraging it to happen. South Africans had just rejoined UNESCO with the move following the end of apartheid. And they had enjoyed Adult Learners Week as a stimulus to remaking a different South Africa, and the Jamaicans spoke too. And it was adopted, and then, the following year by the formal UN processes. So it then spread overall to some 55 countries. But of course, after 1990, 2010, in Belém, in Brazil, UNESCO no longer kept Adult Learners Week as one of its top priorities. In a way, I think they thought Learning Cities took over some of the ideas and functions, and it has slowly reduced to the people who really recognise the benefit of it. And I think it happens best when the coordinating body is a recognised national non-government body that also has the support and confidence of government, and a healthily critical relationship with it as well.
Yeah, thank you for this overview. I agree completely with you. A national institution like ours, for example.
Yes, like yours.
Sorry.
I would. I can't remember when this comes in your questions, but I wanted to say how wonderful the time I spent in Slovenia at the week, and how widespread in the smallest villages your impact has been. And looking at the charts you sent me this week, I mean, you've continued to make it grow in the weft of the full range of Slovenian society. What it reminded me of was the way in the Nordic countries adult learning isn't something you have to make an argument for, because people they know it in their bones, they know it in their history, and I think you've done that in Slovenia. I'm very proud of what you've done.
Thank you, Alan. That's very nice. But we still have to fight for for funds and for the recognition of adult education every day, actually. But I believe, in a way, it has never been so well funded as it is now, because we succeeded in getting some European funds, not only for awareness raising, but also different to foster different kinds of literacy, financial literacy, green literacy, and so on. So I believe it's a good era for adult education, in fact.
Well, we of course have left the European Union, and we read the budgets there very well. Whereas in Britain, we've lost 4.5 million people from publicly supported adult education in the last 10 years. So it is a bleak picture, really. But learning, you can never get rid of it. I mean, new forms emerge all the time of people self-organizing or creating new forms in new places. and the importance of networking, of working with all the other institutions who might have a say in the health sector, in the in work, business, in the armed forces. We found that by having colleges and universities, family learning with young people and parents learning together, as well as the core of our work, that in all of those areas there'd always be something a government really wanted to help us support develop alongside the week, and that we would get developmental funding in cooperation with other people, or they'd get the money and we would provide enthusiastic support in this cross-institutional way, that there are no losers in cooperation.
Right, right. We also very strongly believe in intersectoral cooperation.
Yes.
Luckily, we have this adult education master plan for every
Yes.
10 years. Of course, when reports come in, it's mainly a sum of endeavors and of money from different ministries, but we would like to see it as a synergy. And the synergy you can see at grassroots level when you have this festival and really try to engage all players coming from actually different public sectors and non-governmental institutions as well. And then the picture shows itself. And as you say, it cannot be suppressed. It is alive and it just needs support, I believe.
We were worried that it might just seem as though it was a feature of the publicly supported world. So we created Learning at Work Day in order that businesses would think about adult learning for themselves. And so in the end, I did a job swap for a day with a man who was a bouncer in a Carlisle nightclub. The head of Microsoft in the UK swapped with the head of the Department of Education. People had Taking Your Daughters to Work Day. We found that you could have, you've got very interesting innovations that happen when people give themselves permission to do publicly something they normally do privately, and to just have the Lord of Misrule for one day to change the normal way of doing things. I have to say the Carlisle bouncer was rather better at my job than I was at his. There we go. You asked me if there were any extraordinary things that happened as a result of Adult Learners Week. And I was thinking about the creativity people had, that in Benin in Africa, when they had the week, they spent the 3 weeks leading up to it with a lorry going around every village in the country with literacy materials to stimulate participation. In Russia, they took the Trans-Siberian Express and set up Adult Learners Week events at every railway stop along the way. And the next year they went down the River Volga doing the same thing. In Switzerland, an hour a day for learning. They're just lovely ideas. And in England, we found the oldest learner in the country, who was 108. And he was studying art and French. And we had a party at the Department for Education for him and for 20 other people over the age of 100 from the different regions. After I left that event to go to another of our occasions, I got a taxi and I told the taxi driver about him. And he said, "Doesn't he know he's a bit old to become Picasso?" And then he paused and then he said, "Still, he's twice as old as me and he's got far more imagination. I'd better do something too."
Perfect. What a nice example. That's really what it's all about. But I remember also that you once talked about a florist. Was it a story about somebody?
Oh, the florist.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, this is the year when the government decided they didn't want to pay for adult education anymore. We found a man who ran a flower shop in Brixton in South London, which had just experienced really powerful riots that had hit all the national news and so on. And this man had been a merchant banker, very successful, and had decided to change jobs and had gone to an evening class to learn flower arranging to set up a floristry. And he'd employed half of the people who were at the class with him to work in his flower shop. And so we got the national newspapers to tell his story, that it was adult learning that had changed his life. Do you know, within a fortnight in Parliament, they had stopped saying, we don't want to pay for flower arranging on public taxation. And they said, of course, we know flower arranging can lead to floristry. Changing the mindset. I mean, somehow people think learning is too earnest, that education is too much within boundaries, too much obsessed with how you get on to the next stage of your life. And changing your life, transforming your life will just sustaining it better, to be able to enjoy the balance of your own life better. Those things are things that happen in the extraordinary pleasure people take in learning alongside one another, in challenging oneself to do what you can, and in then celebrating what you've done.
Perfect. You put it always so well. But I will still, when I will talk about the 30 years and about you, I will mention the 2 Ds, dream and dance, and the 2 S's, share and steal.
I know, I was so touched when you mentioned this in Florence, you know.
Well, I was touched before that, so many years before that. I was really touched by this statement because it says in a nutshell what everything is about.
In a way, there's an Indian adult educator, long dead, who moved to the States, Harbans Bowler, and he said adult education is 2 things. It's classes and registers and structured timetables, curriculum and quality of offer. On the one hand, we can call that adult education as structure. But he said there's also adult education as culture, which is singing songs in the street and dancing and showing big exhibits of what you've done and taking what you've done into public places and stopping the traffic or you know, creating a big festival in a park. And I took that very seriously. I thought, we know how to do adult education as structure. What we have to do is to work on the culture.
Right. Perfect. Wow, Alan, like always, you really are such a person who I don't know, makes me very enthusiastic, and that's why so many times I remembered you, and so many times you have been my inspiration and still continue to be so.
Well, and you, me. I remember I suppose it was 2009, we had a conference in Manchester linked to Adult Learners Week, but around learner voice. And then at Belém, we got UNESCO to adopt an international learners charter. They never developed it further, but the energy you and your colleagues had, it was so inspiring. So I've no doubt you have been across a huge period of time, an enormous resource to the people of Slovenia, but also to people like me.
Thank you so much. And the same goes to you.
Well, do you got any more questions?
I don't think so, no. I think we touched everything.
Lovely.
Yes.
Well, I'm not very good at the 2 minute cut off bit, but I'm sure you can find 2 minutes there.
Oh, yes, yes, yes. It might be more than 2 minutes because I picked up quite a few things that I would like to highlight at the
Yes.
celebration. And as I said, we will cut it out and create both versions, send them to you. But above all, I would like to stay in touch with you somehow.
Oh,
Yeah,
well,
yeah,
I would do very much. I mean, we're both on this Hall of Fame
yes.
business, but something you said triggered something I should have said, which was when you were talking about how the funding was better now, and that you could link the work of the lifelong learning weeks that you run to other developmental activity. I think that is distinctive about what the NGO can do. We found that the research we published every year always gave us a vehicle to make it public in the press for a week, actually.
Mm-hmm. Yes, numbers and examples.
Numbers
The
and
two,
examples,
yeah,
exactly.
both have to be, they have to be linked, and then you are really
Yeah.
successful
But you
with,
also have to have passion.
yes, passion is very,
Passion
very
is what
important.
makes it sing, I think.
Yes,
Mm.
exactly.
And
Uh,
luckily, neither of us were short of that.
no, no, not at all. Do you still sing from time to time?
Oh, only Cornish folk songs when
Yes,
drunk.
that's what I had in mind.
I
I
know,
remember
but
after.
only after drinking.
Ah, okay. Will you be in Leipzig at the EAEA annual conference?
I don't think so. No,
No?
we're away.
Ah, that's too
Life
bad.
is. I haven't been to an EAEA conference for a long time.
Uh-huh.
Um, I suppose because I worked with ICAE a lot,
Mm-hmm.
it tended to be Joyce or other colleagues from NIAS who came to EAEA, and then, out of politeness, you leave the space for them, really.
Yes, yes, of course, yeah. Well, there might be another opportunity
Yeah,
to
I'm
meet
sure
in
there will.
person.
There
Yeah.
will. And I hope you really have a wonderful time after you stop the formal bit of work. But as you will discover, there is a long afterlife where people ring up and say, "Will you do this?"
Okay. To tell you the truth, I'm a bit afraid because I have so much work right now, and I really dedicated maybe 80% of my life to
Yes,
work,
yes,
and I have to reprogram somehow.
yes.
Yeah.
I mean, I remember you being very good at listening to yourself, though, of uh, um, knowing who you are, and you will find if you make that time for that,
Yeah.
things will emerge. The worry is people who retire thinking, I know exactly what I'm going to do. Stephen McNair, my colleague in Britain, used to say, everyone knows what they're going to do. It takes 18 months. And then they think, what now?
Yeah.
If
Yeah.
you're at what now, you've got a healthy amount of time to find out what the answer is.
Great. We have to get in touch
So,
afterwards, and you'll get me some other inputs
oh,
because I'm
please,
sure.
please, let's keep in touch.
Let's keep
I
in touch,
so admire
please.
you.
Yeah,
Oh,
and I would also like to ask you if you could write in an email your address, your postal address, because I would like to send you a little token to which I cannot do via computer. So please
okay,
let me know that.
I'll send you my address. Yeah.
Thank you.
Take care,
Okay.
love. Bye bye
Take
now.
care as well. Bye bye.
Bye.